Disclaimer, this content is rated R18+. There may be cursing, blood, gore, and sexual content. This content is for entertainment purposes only. All rights of this product belong to the original owner of the work, Wyona A.M. Copyright. All work in this video from our audio written book belongs to the original writer, artist, Wyona A.M. This video is for entertainment purposes only. To contact the original artist for use of products shown or heard in this video, contact at YouTube channel Wham times 3 blog, Instagram Wham times 3, Twitter at mx3_WA, Facebook page Wham times 3. The program used to edit this video was Adobe Premiere Elements 2020. Hello everyone! We are now on to chapter 3! Woo! The Wolfren. So please enjoy, and I really hope you guys have been enjoying this series. This is a book I have been working on for a really long time. This book that we've been reading actually took me about 5 years to write and edit. And that doesn't even count the book before it that I wrote, which is actually technically the second book that I am still currently working on. And that one I'd been working on since high school. And then, of course, the layout for the third book is up as well. So that one I'm also still working on. So I'm really hoping you guys are enjoying this. I also wanted to let you guys know that I do have my Patreon up. I've only done one post on there so far. I am still learning my way around it. It is a new platform for me. All of this is kind of new for me. I'm kind of familiar with Instagram and Twitter, and of course Facebook, which I've had Facebook since I was a freshman in high school. So this is all fairly new to me. I will start working on some merch and some other things. I actually am thinking about also doing a live chat with my fans. If you guys are interested, I would love to get together at least once a month, sit down and have coffee with each other and just catch up and see how everyone is doing around the world. So look forward to that. I've yet to decide if I'm going to have that exclusively on my Patreon or if I will also do it as well on my YouTube. I'm still figuring that out. I'm more or less set up the Patreon more. If you guys want to support me, you are always welcome to in any shape or form, whether that's just liking this and sharing, or if you want to go a little bit further, you have my Patreon that you can go and just give me, a little small donation, buy me a cup of coffee. I am more than happy to share with that. I also want to give out a shout to one of my fans who is also a really good friend of mine. You have met her before in some of my previous blog videos. I want to give a shout out to Alyssa. She just got her third letter that she needed for her transition and her surgery. So I want to give a big shout out to you, and I am so proud of you, and I want you to know how proud I am of you to the point I will share it with the rest of my fans. So congratulations, Alyssa. I am so happy for you continuing your fight and continuing to become the gorgeous woman we all know you are meant to be. So congrats. I love you, and I love the rest of my sweeties as well. And please enjoy chapter 3. Loosely in her hands as she shuffled to the bus stop. Exams. Of course it had to be a day of exams when Ayato and Laito decided to both feast on her at the same time that morning. The memory still fresh in her head. Ayato pinned her to the wall and drank from her neck, Laito kneeling down so he could feast on her inner thigh. That place seemed to be his favorite spot. She didn't really understand why, though. She passed a couple making out on a bench, the guy reaching up the girl's skirt that she wore despite the cold. The girl gurgled, not noticing the stranger quietly passing by, which was fine with Kelly. She did like that about herself. She could easily disappear into a crowd without even trying. Would it be that easy to get away from the vampire brothers? She wondered, sitting down at the stop and pulling out the book she'd been reading the last couple of days. Oh, by the way, Pancake. Ayato's voice echoing through her memory, even the memory of how he sat on the couch and glared at her with those green snake-like eyes. If you ever think about cutting yourself, remember your blood is your rent. Any drop wasted is a drop added to your rent. She sighed. Where could she run to, though? It was winter once again, a wet, cold winter. The snow had come the night before, and now at least half of it was melted, leaving half-frozen puddles along the roads and paths. The snow, when she passed through it, was slushy, soaking you in a matter of seconds. There wasn't anywhere to go, really, except the subway, but they'd find her easily there. At the same time, she also didn't want to leave. Her mind was too busy. She quit concentrating the book in her hands. The clock seemed to move too slow. The bus headed to the stop seemed to go even slower, and then everything froze. Kelly looked up from putting her book back in the bag and looked around. The bus was frozen. Even the puddle it drove through was frozen in mid-splash. Her heart began to race, but she stayed frozen, acting like whatever happened around the area also had happened to her too. A growl came from the other side of the road, deep from the throat. Not a cat, but not quite a dog or a wolf either. It was another unworldly growl, not from this time and space, but from a place in between. The void, as most humans knew it as. The reason why ghosts could be seen or heard or even felt. She had nothing on her, though, nothing to fight with. How could she be so stupid? She cursed at herself. After months of living with the vampire brothers, she'd grown so used to thinking she was safe, she wasn't being hunted anymore. The growls came from all directions. She was surrounded. A pair of glowing red eyes stared at her through the dark bushes, soon joined by more eyes and growls. White, long, sharp teeth, black, no, shadowy ghosts like wolf bodies. Nowhere to run. She was surrounded. No weapons. She couldn't fight, but she wasn't ready to die. Yet. The shadowy wolves attacked. She dodged, kicked one, then ran through the frozen park. She ran until her lungs burned, then she ran more. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care as long as she got away. As she ran down a highway, she realized the whole city had been frozen in time. She had seen the wolfman stop time in a place, but a whole city? That was new. She tripped over a man's leg, landing hard on cold, hard cement. The wolfmen surrounded her, growling. Their red eyes stared at her hungrily. They had been hunting her for as long as Kelly could remember, and her memory was strange, like she lived many different lifetimes in many different areas, with so many names. She shook her head. This was not the time, she growled at her memory. A wolfman launched at her from the roof of a car. She covered her head with her arms and heard a loud yip. She looked up in time to see a flash of a black blade strike two more down. Aito stood in front of her, sword in hand. Then blue flames covered the bridge. Cars exploded and froze in mid-air as Laito joined them, his eyes glowing that strange green blue she'd come to recognize when he used his powers. That was a close call, he said, a dark smile on his lips as his triplet brother chopped off the head of the remaining wolfen before turning to him. Our little pet almost got taken. He looked at Kelly, who froze, staring up at him in amazement. His eyes stopped glowing, and he handed Ayato the sheath for the sword. Ayato sheathed the sword, then pulled Kelly impatiently by the arm off the ground. Come on, he growled, dragging Kelly with him. Laito picked up her bag, following behind. Ayato threw Kelly into the back seat of a royal blue sports car and got in the driver's seat. Laito got in the passenger seat and handed Kelly her book bag. As Aito started the engine, he turned the vehicle around, weaving through the traffic before they hit the main highway, where he floored it, going over 100 miles an hour out of the city as time started to unfreeze. Kelly was left to hold on for dear life before he turned onto a dirt road and slowed down. They got too close this time, Aito cursed. This time? Kelly thought, finally able to sit normally. What did he mean by this time? So what do you suggest? Asked Laito, who'd been looking out the window. We have that spare room, answered Aito, changing gear and speeding up. I don't like her working in the bathhouse. So put her in the spare room and switch her to the mansion? You know what Luca would say. Who gives a fuck what Luca says? Growled Ayato. He may be the second oldest, but this is our estate, not his. Does she even have to work? Ayato sounded pissed. She heard the engine of the vehicle roar as they sped down the barely noticeable dirt road, weaving through the trees. You're the one who agreed to her working, Laito pointed out. Ayato practically growled in response. I'm content just having the fresh blood. Laito licked his lips and winked at Kelly, who shrunk into the back. Agreed. But what about my pay? I need to work. Laito looked at her with a raised eyebrow. I need that money. He did like how she would become tough, even when she was obviously cowering. Aito slammed the brakes and she fell hard into the back of his seat, a squeak escaping her lips. Do you realize blood donors get paid more than regular workers, don't you? She glared at Aito from the floor as the car moved again. He changed gears, increasing the speed rapidly. Of course, with how your blood tastes, I think we could talk Luca into even more money, commented Laito as he grabbed Kelly, dragging her into the front seat and into his lap. "What do you think?" he asked, referring to both Ayato and her as he took her chin in his fingers, lifting her head to expose her neck. Ayato glanced at them as he changed to a lower gear as they rounded a bend to pull into the underground garage. "Luku want a taste first," Ayato growled, getting out of the vehicle, slamming the door. Laito followed, pulling Kelly along. "That pain in the ass. Why does he have to handle all of our finances? After all, we inherited the estate, not him," growled Ayato. "After all, she belongs to us, not the whole damn clan." "If you had it your way, she'd only belong to you," Laito pointed out. "I respect the fact you found her first and you're sharing," Ayato growled as they walked into a hallway and up another flight of stairs. He stepped into Laito's room. He placed the girl on his bed. The bed and room brought back memories. Almost a year ago to the date, she had stepped into this very room, a room which had been the only one in an abandoned mansion untouched. "We need to keep her close out. I didn't realize the wolfen wanted her so badly." Ayato sat down on the chair in front of the fire as Laito sat down next to Kelly, who had sat up on the bed. She could feel Laito's presence. "So it's settled then? Or would you rather she sleep with one of us?" asked Laito, seeming perfectly relaxed. Ayato frowned and thought. "She should be safe just being on our floor, and it will be nice to have our food closer," he said with a faint smile. Kelly squirmed uncomfortably before Laito grabbed her ankle, bringing her closer to him. She squeaked as she found herself back on her back and against Laito. "I do agree," he said, his fingers wrapping around the back of her neck and her leg to bring her to a sitting position on his lap. She found herself straddling him. He took a deep breath of her as he removed the scarf and began unbuttoning her jacket, revealing her V-neck black sweater. "I am tired, but I call dibs for the morning," Ayato laughed. "A V-neck, Petron?" he mused, his green eyes meeting her purple ones. She closed her half-gaping mouth. She still hadn't recovered from the shock of the day. Her brain was still processing everything. He also looked overwhelmed. Laito licked at Kelly's throat. "Let me help you relax." His breath brushed her skin. He gently inserted his fangs, moving her closer. One hand sat on the back of her neck and the other on her lower back, pushing her forward. Her breast pressed against his chest, her legs widened to compensate his invasion. She could feel his manhood against her womanhood, which clenched and moistened. It had never done that before, reacting to another's body in such a way. His scent invaded her senses as her jacket slowly fell off her arms and landed at Laito's feet. Her heart pounded in her ears, drawing her blood to him in fast gulps. Her vision stirred to blur, her mind grew blank. She closed her eyes, sinking into his body. Kelly moved her arms up to rest against his biceps. His hand moved down her back, stopping just above her butt. His fingers brushed the fabric away from her skin. He slid his hand under her shirt. He deepened his feeding. "Laito," she whispered. He smiled against her skin. "Yes, Petron," he mused, releasing her. She laid her head against his shoulder. "Getting too relaxed?" he chuckled. She placed her hands on his shoulders and forced herself to sit up. Her head throbbed in protest. Black dots showed in front of her vision. She closed her eyes tightly, groaning a little. Laito watched her, a small smile on his lips and satisfaction in his eyes. "What is it, my pet?" he asked, his hands coming to rest on her hips. "How long have the wolf been?" "Since day one, but remember we agreed. You gave yourself to me for protection, and I would do my end of the agreement." She looked up at him. "No." He grabbed her around the waist and flipped her over. "Relax," he whispered against her skin, his fangs digging deep. Her room was done with dark wood walls, oak furniture, white curtains, and a bedding with a white comforter. Above the small fireplace was a painting of a white wolf walking along a river with white running water over jagged dark rocks. It was night, or maybe a cave. The wolf was being led by a hummingbird carrying a lantern. She found herself drawn to it like she'd been to that very place the wolf was standing. It was the same feeling as when she had first met Laito and the rest of the triplets. She reminded herself for the thousandth time that she was no more but a guest in the quarters, and to be thankful they hadn't done her bed in pink or worse, rags. Some days she would be thrown away, and if she was lucky, she'd have enough to spend to go to a quiet place and retire in peace. "Do you like it?" Laito whispered in her ear, placing his hands on her shoulders. He appeared out of nowhere. They all seemed to like to do that. His breath tickled her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. "Simple and plain. It's perfect for a pet." She shrugged, quietly looking around the small room. Laito looked a little hurt. She pretended not to notice. A makeup table with 2 dressers on both sides and a large mirror that reflected the room back. A connected bathroom with a walk-in shower, a large bathtub, and a toilet. Through the door or on the other side was Laito's bedroom. A window sill wide enough to be considered a small 2-person couch with red and white cushions. It overlooked the rose garden maze. Hi, Raven. One of the pagodas with snow-capped mountains. showing in the distance. The mattress was a queen and looked tiny, especially compared to Laito's large bed that could fit several people on it. You can make it as you would like. After all, this is your home now. He set her two small bags down on the bed and opened them. His voice hinted that he was making a point. Laito pulled the clothes out and put them away in one of the dressers, but she was pretty sure he was counting them or seeing what condition they were in, since he'd unfold, examine, and refold and place in the drawer or toss it to the side. They were all thrift store clothes, some even from the homeless shelter. She'd went and got some her first paycheck. At least your taste in clothes has changed, he teased, remembering what she'd been wearing when she had first arrived. She blushed slightly. He turned, looking her up and down, that possessive look gleaming up to the surface. And you've kept your meat. He moved in front of her and took her hips in his hands, pressing against her. He buried his face into her hair and breathed deeply, enjoying the smell of her. She was surrounded by his aroma and heat. He reluctantly released her. I'll see you at dinner tonight. He waved his hand dramatically as he left the room. Over the next couple of days, Laito sent Kelly off with father's secretary, Krista, to get some new clothes and a makeover. He said she couldn't be his toy if she didn't look the part. When had she agreed to these terms, she wondered, as Krista dragged her around the mall, dressing the poor girl in short, frilly skirts, tops with a teased skin that had easy access for a vampire's fangs, paired with flats, heels, even a pair of knee-high black boots. After some disagreements, the two females did finally agree on the color black, with some hints of color, like black sweaters to go with pink or blue skirts, but she mostly insisted on her usual jeans and sweaters. Krista did agree on some to go with other work-out clothes for when Kelly did her training with Nicholas, another commitment she did not agree to. Her hair was trimmed into layers. Laito said he liked it long, but it needed to be tamed. The makeup was done lightly, the liner winged up, making her big puppy eyes animated, a light layer of gloss on her dark pink lips. She was fine with everything until they went to a lingerie store and bought some nightgowns made out of lace and silks, thongs, bras that pushed up her breasts, bringing more attention to her small chest. When Krista was done with Kelly, she dragged the small girl into a studio where Laito and two other boys, about the same age as him, however, one was a vampire and the other a wolf, were having pictures taken of them. Was this where she'd recognize him? She found herself wondering as his green emeralds rested on her. She was cute, mixed with a little sexy. Laito liked the way her dark hair had been trimmed to frame her face. She looked almost doll-like, he mused. When they called for a break, Laito went straight to his new toy and took her hair into his hands, kissing it. Laito, where have you been hiding this little cutie? Asked one of the boys. He had short, dirty blonde hair, and his skin was lightly tanned with golden, whiskey-colored eyes. The other boy had white hair, pale skin, and his eyes were red, albino at first glance, but on second glance she realized he was just now a pure-blood vampire like Laito. This is my cousin Subaru, and this is one of her alphas, Eric, introduced Laito in pleasurable amusement, knowing she knew what they were on first sight. This is my new toy, Kelly. Joe paced around her, a hand resting on her shoulder. And no, I would not share my Petchen, he warned Subaru, who rolled his eyes. Petchen? Not little bitch? Questioned Eric in mock. He'd grown up with the brothers and had grown accustomed to Laito's nicknames for girls. Because she's special, insisted Laito. Eric raised an eyebrow as Subaru came behind Kelly, taking a deep breath of her scent, his curiosity growing. Come, we are going out, explained Laito, taking her from his cousin's embrace. They followed quietly as Laito led the way to a club where Subaru, Laito, and Kai, being dragged of course, went to the dance floor. When they returned to the table where Eric sat, drinking a glass of whiskey, and watched one of the waitresses, they found Anna sitting there. He smiled a greeting at Callie, looking her up and down. She was thankful to finally see a familiar face that hadn't been perverted to her. Nick, or Nicholas, the troll. His human form had dark, thick, wavy hair, tan skin from living his life on the beach, much like Eric, but his eyes were gold with the slits diagonal like a toad, the only giveaway that he indeed was not human. Nice to see you're doing well, he mused, his golden eyes staring straight into hers. Nice to see you too, she said back, taking a seat across from Nick, Laito sitting next to her, grabbing the brim of his fedora he always wore, and giving a slight bow to Nick. Kelly sensed respect between the two, where the cousins seemed to just be in each other's company simply because they had to put up with each other. Nick, Eric, Laito were friends. Nick was one of the head of guards that protected the mansion. Kelly wouldn't have been able to get in if it hadn't been for Nick. She quietly remembered washing up on the beach, half-starved already, and stumbling her way to Nick's little beach shack, only to be attacked by the wolfmen, ghostly, shadowy creatures with glowing red eyes. Nick handed her the envelope and sent her down into the basement, where she found a secret passage that led to the front gate of the mansion. Not that she had lived at the mansion for almost half a year, she realized there were spells, enchantments, creatures big and small protecting the mansion, which explained why when you first approached it seemed like a ruined building like she had first seen it, or a two-story house like Krista saw. To most humans and outsiders, though, it simply looked like a thick forest. It actually was hidden in a national forest, which Naito had donated long ago for extra protection. She had the history of the mansion, the feel of the grounds, even the dark stories it held. It was the closest she had ever felt to home. The lake still scared her, though. It was still her quiet place. But when she placed her feet in the water, it had turned dark and cold. Never again, she noted to herself at that time. She also enjoyed the horse barn, which lay on the opposite side of the mansion from the bathhouse. The horses seemed normal, except some had strange designs like lightning bolt swirls. One was a blue-gray color, but they all enjoyed her company and she theirs. The largest of the horses was a big black horse named Lava, who at first glance looked like a Frisian, but then you realized he was larger than a Clydesdale, and had 6 legs, 4 in the front and 2 in the back. He was Leito's horse, and only Leito could ride him, or even approach him for that matter. The horse would watch her quietly from a distance, but never approached, even when she brought treats for the horses. She'd offer, but he sniffed and turned his head away. He was Leito's horse, and no one ever dared approach him. So what do you think, Nick? Leito's voice echoed into her thoughts. Can you train Kelly? That dragged her out of her thoughts completely. Leito was leaning forward, looking at his friend with usual pleasurable smile like he was enjoying himself. The other two were gone. Eric was on the dance floor, and Subaru had stepped up for a smoke. To fight the Wolfwind? Questioned Nick, finishing off his shot. No. Leito looks down suddenly. But to keep it from being captured by the Wolfwind? Possibly. Yes. He looked into his friend's eyes. Nick took a sip of a drink the waitress had put down in front of him before placing a margarita in front of Kelly and handed Leito a dark, almost black liquid in a large wine glass. She had given both men a seductive look. Kelly took a sip of the drink. She'd never had one before, but she liked the taste and tried to stay in the here and now, instead of getting lost in her thoughts like she kept finding herself doing a lot lately. It depends on Kelly, though. His golden eyes met Kelly's purple ones. She looked away to the dance floor. That would be enough. Leito said that one came into the mansion the other night, but he chased it off. Kelly found herself going numb with an icy chill running down her spine. This whole time she thought she was safe, but a wolfen had managed to make its way into the mansion itself. Was this whole time of safety nothing more than an illusion? Getting through? Sounds like someone's laying them in, Eric stated, his whiskey eyes scanning the group. That's why I'm keeping her close. It seems having her room next to mine isn't enough. Leito finished off his drink in one gulp and called the waitress for another. I am considering placing her in my room. Kelly shifted nervously at the thought. It wasn't the first time she'd shared a bed with the vampire. She had been completely out at the time. Drugged up on the medicine Leito fed her to heal, she couldn't really remember much. The first time she'd fully come through just to have Leito lay next to her with only a towel around his hips. She felt a pleasant tingling run down her spine and into her core. She shifted again. Are you sure it's not just the fact that you want her in your bed? Said Super with some disgust, returning to the table. Leito chuckled. Though, cousin, it would be nice to have my pet Chun so close at hand, but I assure you it's more to do with her safety. After all, I have found a rare jewel. There's no reason to lose it because of stupidity. Sure it is, chuckled Nick, giving Kelly a wink. She felt her face start burning and quickly turned her attention away. Again, the conversation went on. Kelly zoned out the conversation, her attention turning briefly to the waitress that Eric had been watching. There was something strangely familiar about the girl. When they left, Nick and Eric was singing, Kelly and Leito sitting in a tree. First comes love, then comes marriage. They did this between laughter and dancing through the falling leaves. Leito hit the button on his keys to unlock his vehicle and opened the passenger door for Kelly, who quickly got in. He went to the other side, and they drove off. She could still hear the singing of the two, and Queen Subaru yelling at them. You're quiet, Pet-chan. Kelly didn't respond, just continued to look out the window. I hope you're not taking what they said to heart. Why do you bother to keep me around? The question even surprised her. Leito narrowed his eyes at her. What do you mean? I'm not good for anything but to cause everyone trouble. I have nothing to pay you back with. Why keep a useless? Leito pulled over and tackled her down, laying the seat down. He kissed her deeply. She squeaked in shock as his hands went up her shirt and his tongue dipped deep into her mouth. His thumb rubbed her nipples. She sucked her breath in as the kiss deepened. His other hand slid down her back and went under her skirt. His long fingers brushed her lips and dipped in. She gasped, breaking the kiss. His lips moved to her throat, leaving thick, wet kisses down her neck. "This is why, Pet-chan," he said, putting his hand into her pants and dipped a finger inside. It curled. She gasped and tried to pull his hand away. A second hand grabbed both of hers and held them above her head. "You're worth more than you think," he added, a second finger finding her sweet spot as he sucked on one of her nipples. She cried out, her body arched, lightning streaked through her body. She screamed. His fingers and mouth did magic to her body. This wasn't the first time she'd felt the touch of a man. However, this was the first time she'd felt anything like this. He pulled out his fingers and licked at the juices. "You belong to me." She looked into his glowing eyes through haze. "And I will prove it." He unzipped his pants, positioning himself at her opening as he pressed to enter, reading her thoughts as he did. Her scent changed. A flash of men forcing themselves. Laughing pain, he shoved himself inside. Her body went into a slight shock. "Pet-chan," he softened, reaching for her through his mind to reach hers. She slowly opened her eyes. Their eyes locked. Her body slowly relaxed. His hips began to gently move against hers, simply enjoying the feel of her body wrapped around his. She moved tentatively like a virgin, meeting his rhythms shyly. She wrapped her hands around his throat, her hands burning into his red waves. His fedora fell as his lips reached for hers. His tongue dipped into hers without hesitation, urging hers to battle. She hesitated and then joined. The lips unlocked as they took a breath. She nipped at his throat. He purred in delight, his hands wrapping around to pull her buttocks further up. This allowed for him to go deeper. She gasped, then moaned as he went deeper, hitting a spot she didn't even know existed. She felt something building up. She began to get scared. "Shh, Pet-chan. Relax. Release. Give it to me," he said. Her arms instinctively wrapped around his neck. She felt the build coming to the climax. Yes, that's it. He went faster and deeper. The release hit her hard, her body shuddering. She felt his hot seed spilling into it. This only sent her through another set of releases. They moaned together. He buried his fangs into her flesh, marking her over and over again as his body rocked against hers, riding with her through the aftershocks and bringing another build of climax. It was incredible. He knew how to move just to hit the spots that sent lightning bolts across her vision and through her body. Her body was at his mercy as it craved this new feeling, this new sensation. When his fangs entered her flesh, it added to the feeling, but he didn't drink like he usually did. He released and bit again in a different spot, like butterfly kisses along her flesh. She felt their connection not only deep within her body, but also her being. He was claiming her more than he'd ever claimed her before. She feared that after this there was no escape, but the thought didn't truly scare her. It was actually more comforting. He sat up suddenly, his rhythm fast and hard, going as deep in it as fast as he could. She felt her own release shaking her body as thick warmth poured into her again, sending them both through another set of aftershocks. Their voices went into the night until he finally collapsed on top, both of them breathing heavily. He held her there, neither wanting to move anytime soon, simply enjoying the aftershocks. The sunrise peered through the trees. She must have dozed off. His heartbeat was calm and steady against her ear. She realized that she lay on his chest. She looked up at Lito. He was looking out the window. She laid her head down on his chest. She just realized his hand was moving up and down her back, stroking her. His large overcoat covered both of them, their fur tickling her skin. "I'm sorry." She couldn't help herself. His cheek pressed against the top of her head. "I'm sorry I'm of so much trouble." His hand grabbed her chin and raised her head to face him. "Do not be sorry. The only thing you need to be sorry about is thinking so little of yourself." She knew he meant it. "I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner." He kissed the top of her forehead, then laid her back down on his chest. "But I promise you, I will never have that happen again." His voice went cold. Time melted away. Something pulled at that dark place in her memory. She knew this place, knew these arms and this warmth. She knew this scent, this heat. She snuggled into him, closing her eyes. A small buzzing sound entered the stillness. "Hello. We're fine. On the driveway." "How close?" "I'm on my way." He put his phone down with a heavy sigh. "We have to get back." "This better be good," he growled at Nick, sitting down in the lounge chair. "Sorry, did I interrupt something?" Nick asked, sipping a cup of coffee. Lito gave him a look. "I believe I found our snitch, and you won't believe who he's reporting to." "Who?" Lito asked, his head resting on his hand. "Your uncle." Lito looked back at Nick, who handed him an envelope of pictures. "Why would Richard want my pet? Much less send the Wolford." Lito flipped through the pictures, seeing one of the half-breed vampires talking with an older, tall man. He had dark, wavy hair, dressed in a traditional black suit of the vampires. Richard Clark, Subaru's father and the black sheep of the family. had been banished when he had tried to help Claudia to kill the heirs and take over the coven. Maybe we should ask him ourselves. No, we need him to think we are not onto him. Leto knew how his uncle thought. Tighten security, but keep it under hush-hush. Leto left the room and went to his room. He'd ordered Kelly to go to his room and wait for him there. He hoped she'd listened. He walked into his room. The lights were out. A fire blazed in the fireplace, sending shadowy lights throughout the room. Kelly lay on his bed, the red covers accenting her kissed skin. He put his fedora on the bedpost. She had showered. He could smell the fresh, clean scent. He stripped and went into the shower. He remembered the feeling of being inside her. His beast had claimed her instantly. She was his, fully and completely. It would be hard to share her now without killing anyone. He took a deep breath. His brothers would recognize the marks and know they weren't feeding marks. He turned the water to cold, taking some deep breaths, holding his beast down. The blue tiger protested. Leto stepped out of the shower. He hadn't bothered towing off. He went straight to the bed and wrapped her in his arms. She groaned, shifting into him. You're wet. I followed your lead, Petron. He kissed her neck over one of his marks. He buried his face in her hair, taking a deep breath. Her hair was still damp. At least dry off, she said, snuggling into him. She sounded tired. Did I tire you out already, Petron? He tight. He could smell her body instantly react. She knew what he meant. Her legs shifted slightly. He snuggled into her, simply enjoying having her in his arms. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed Chapter 3, The Wolf Run. We are starting to get to a little bit of a climax going on in our story as well. Please don't be a little rough on me on my very first sex scene I ever wrote. I'm still kind of getting used to those, and I have been reading writers who tend to do those type of scenes in their books just to kind of get a idea. So hopefully later on it gets a little bit better, especially in my second book as well. And I hope you guys have been enjoying this series. Please like, share, and if you want, you can also buy me a cup of coffee by going to my Patreon. I hope you all are doing well, and if you are in an area like me, I hope you are enjoying the lovely snow that we have gotten. Bye, and take care, my sweeties.